Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today, head coach of the UCONN Huskies women's volleyball team, Ellen Herman-Kimball. Welcome to Bump Set Chat, a podcast for volleyball professionals who come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today, I'm super excited. I have the head coach for the UCONN Huskies, Ellen Herman-Kimball. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're able to do this. So, how was Tampa? I heard you you guys went down there for a couple of days.
Yeah, Tampa was great. There's a lot of hype behind the sport in general. Just being able to be on a streamlined television with ABC. I got a little bit of a warm up to it because I'm a part of the Division I head coaches committee with the ABCA. So, promoting as much as we can about the sport, and then actually seeing it come through to fruition here was pretty remarkable. We got to experience it in person in regards to the semis and the championship. It was insane. Like it was. I mean, just what you see on TV is what you experience in some cases when you're there, even better. And Tampa is another space where all of us coaches can go and learn from each other, and grow ourselves, whether that's our individual leadership, whether that's our team leadership, whether that's finding out new ways and new drills to coach or new training ideas. It was a quick trip. It's always tough a little bit right around the holiday season, especially if you're not the one participating.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But committing to that time. And it's also a good time for us as a staff to continue to keep kind of growing together and conversing and saying, oh, I saw this, that I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And then also a little bit on the end of like growing your own personal growth as well when it comes to the professional world. So it was a great experience.
Awesome. All right. So welcome to the pod. So the way we're going to start things off is we do 3 random questions. So are you ready?
Random.
All right. Yeah. All right. Favorite home cooked meal?
Oh, shoot. It's changed. I would say back in the day when I was growing up, I always enjoyed my dad's sausage and potatoes, typical Midwest flair.
Yeah.
And then now I'd have to go to like a good old taco bowl, or my mom has crock pot recipes are the best. So Mississippi pot roast, solid.
Oh, Mississippi pot roast.
Yeah, you put a chuck roast in the crock pot. You do nothing else but put it on low for 8 hours and sprinkle some au jus seasoning, some ranch seasoning, and some peppercini peppers, and it's golden with some potatoes on the side, some veggies. You're solid. So yeah.
Oh, nice. Awesome. All right. So second one, best thing about living in Connecticut, from coming from the Midwest and now living in Connecticut, how, what's one of the nice things about living out here?
I think the location. I think just the simplicity of being able just to get in a car and go to the mountains an hour away, going to the ocean, going to Boston, going to New York City. I think that's the location piece, and the people too are great. I think we're right in between the hustle and bustle of Boston and New York City, so we get a little bit more of the melting pot of people, but also the blue collarness of working really, really hard and having that family holistic type atmosphere too. So I think that's probably what it is.
Yeah, that's the same thing. I tell people, from home in Canada, like living down here, like with 30 minutes to the ocean, we've got Boston, New York, if you want to go that way, the mountains of Vermont and New Hampshire. It's like you've got everything within, not a bad drive.
Yeah, my family is I'm the one that's escaped. So and I shouldn't even say escaped because that seems like it's a bad thing. But like I've been the one I've always been a transplant. Like since college, I have just never been at home for longer than a couple months. And my stepmom and my dad and my mom, they're always like, man, like, did you see now they're on Instagram. So now they're sending me stuff like, oh my gosh, did you see this like cute little cottage or this like, bed and breakfast, or did you see this place? Like, this is so cool. And then they have like a bunch of TLC shows and home cook shows that are just like based in New England.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but thanks for the recommendation. Yeah. And growing up in Ohio I loved it. Like I didn't know what I didn't know,
Yeah.
but now living here, it's like I thought I was good at directions coming to Connecticut. Not, I mean, now I'm got it under control, but like I could take 2 turns in Connecticut and be like, what did I do?
Yeah.
And then coming from Flatland, Ohio, it's like you go straight, you turn left, and you go
Yeah.
straight and you turn right. Yeah, but it's a good place to live. I enjoy it for sure.
Excellent. All right. Final question of these random questions is you're about to hit the road with the team. Are you listening to a audiobook? What's your music playlist, or, what are you listening to?
Listening. Okay. I'm a Spotify person. However, the staff and we were actually just talking about this yesterday. I'm not really loving the fact that it like just picks the playlist for me. Like if I go for a genre, or if I'm like, hey, morning mix
Yeah.
or Sunday, whatever, it just like picks the songs I continually listen to. And unfortunately for my own benefit, a majority of the things that I listen to are with my daughter, Josephine, who's 5. And I'm lucky that she listens to the music that I listen to, which is another joke.
Yeah.
But so like I'm like a big EDM, like house music gal.
Uh-huh.
So any genre like that is what I listen to. And believe it or not, sometimes I don't listen to anything on my drive coming into work. Like it's just me and my thoughts,
Yeah.
which sometimes can be crazy. But yeah, I think what I'm typically listening to most of the time is Spotify and some sort of EDM music.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So let's jump into this. So, we're lucky enough that, we live close enough. We were able to, catch a bunch of games this past season. And it was wonderful to see you guys win that, end of the season, send the seniors off with a W. How was, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of teams don't win their last game, so that's great.
Yeah.
And as you know, the season was tough. Definitely a growing season. But talking about the end, I think the team, what I was most proud of them is that they just never gave up. And we talked about that a lot in the gym and practice, is like the easy thing is just to shut the door.
Yeah.
And the easy thing is to just close it down. And whether that you say that physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever. But if you would come into our gym during training throughout the entire season, you would have guessed what our record was. And to me, that just shows that they're bought into obviously our vision as a staff, and our vision is their vision, and then on top of it, they just have a high pace that they're not worried about what happens tomorrow. They want to be better a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, and using that as their motivation. So I think that's one of my major thoughts and recollections from the end of the season is the fact it just could have been easy to be like, cool,
right,
we're done, and they didn't. And so they chose the hard right. And
excellent. And I had Peter on, I had Maggie, and I had KB on, sort of a freshman, senior, and a coach, and they all sort of talking to them, you couldn't even tell that the record was the way it was. Just really enjoyed the environment, the culture that's built around there. It just and I think that really echoes what you were just talking about.
Yeah, I agree. It's I mean, I'm a young head coach. I obviously had the experience of playing in college and at the next level professionally, and had a dip in national team, and that playing experience provides obviously some empathy and whatnot in regards to me as a coach. And yeah, I think that the style and the commitment that we lay when we recruit, and our communication. Like it's just the messaging that I think is really, really important. We had a mantra this season that was process focused. So it was, I don't know if you saw, like, practice shirts, it was I can, you can, we will.
Mm-hmm.
And the I cans was what is something as myself as an individual can do or get better at, that can better, obviously for the benefit of the team. And so we had I can statements every single week. Sometimes I was like, do I do it every 2 weeks to allow them some growth areas? And the I cans was just establishing, like, I can pass a 2.1, or I can serve the ball with aggressiveness and pace and trajectory to zone 2, whatever that is. Like, and sometimes it's for those, that even allows those that may not be able to participate and contribute on the floor, to provide a measurement in a match. It was also like, I can be a support system for my other left sides. Like, I can be vocal, I can be vocal in my decision making, that I think that I can help out my teammates. So it really provoked an influential environment from a process and progress standpoint. And then it launched into our UCAN. So like the UCAN is like the encouragement, like the growth of a championship culture, championship team is, you can't do it alone. Like you just can't. And a part of that is encouraging your teammates, supporting your teammates. So then at the end of those weeks, we would then take, 10 minutes, not even, we'd prompt them with a question that they would then have to ask and reflect to their teammates. Right. So, as simple as like, what did you see here, and think about your teammates and their ICANs from this week. And then every week during our scouting report, we would have our we will statements. So very team oriented. That was something that we did in regards to our team drills throughout the week. And in turn, when we would accomplish our we will statements, we would then recollect, or we would, add on those Mondays or Tuesdays when our first day of training was, depending on our off day, we would then say, hey, like, okay, let's evaluate. Let's evaluate our we wills. Let's evaluate what we did, what we didn't do, why, how can we be better? What did we do wrong? What did we do right? And then, the goal by the end of the season was to have this whole bulletin board full of we will statements.
Nice.
And I think that allowed us to focus on the process and not necessarily, the wins and the losses. And, again, like that's just one measurement. I understand that, but it's really hard to win. It's really hard to win, and it's really hard to win on a consistent basis. And sometimes when we lost, we lost by like decimal points, like in, so I think that provoked an environment that didn't allow us to be overwhelmed by, well, why?
Right.
Like, what's the point? What's the worth? I don't see any progress. And so that helped a ton.
Let's go back to the beginning. So you're from the Midwest. When did you first discover volleyball?
First time was family gatherings. So my father is the oldest of 8.
Oh, wow.
Big family, big Irish Catholic family. So we would have cookouts, and like every other weekend, it was like somebody's birthday, a holiday, a cookout, whatever it was. And we'd always go to my grandparents' house. And believe it or not, like my grandparents had a volleyball net in their backyard, and it was held up by like, those big circular, like metal, I don't know, outlines or frames that was just filled with cement with this big hole. And we just rolled it out in the backyard, and we put a net in there. And I would say a majority of my family are fairly athletic. Like, so I remember my aunts always playing volleyball. Like, we would just play volleyball in the backyard. And I think that's kind of what launched it. But I also, in that time, like, like I said, I'm not that old, but 15, 20 years ago, when I was a growing child, we would be playing everything. We'd be outside all the time. We'd play shuffleboard. We'd play basketball. We'd play frisbee, played softball, played tag. Like, all these things that were great. And then, so I was a if you want to call it a
Yeah.
multi-sport athlete as a child, like in my adolescence, I was doing all those things. And then finally, when I got to middle school, we had organized sports, from a school perspective. Like I
Right.
was a part of organized sports. Prior to that, I was heavy into soccer, heavy into softball. And then once I got to middle school, we had a middle school team and I tried out for the volleyball team and I made it and I was the setter. And yeah, and that's how it
Oh,
started.
wow.
So
And that what was the hook that volleyball had on you versus, like you said, you were all these you played soccer and other sports as well. What was it about volleyball that just grabbed you?
I think it's a balance of a lot of sports. Like you're not running all the time,
Mm-hmm.
one. Um, you touch the ball often, two.
Yeah.
It's a team sport, which I love, three. And something happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like, so like you have to be skilled, you have to be athletic, you have to be smart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think, and you can still you can still be able to, even though there's a net in between and it's not a contact sport, there's still an aggressiveness about it that I loved.
Yeah.
Um, I also loved basketball. I really loved basketball as well. I was a 4'5", so I was because I'm tall and I didn't mind contact. I didn't mind bodying up somebody or boxing somebody out. Like that
Yeah.
wasn't a big deal to me. But I did basketball all through high school as well. So I was basketball, volleyball, but I stuck with volleyball because one, two, I was better at it than I was in
Mm-hmm.
basketball. And yeah, it's just that innate, like that intangible feeling that you're like, I just really like it.
Yeah.
And now in my experience of growing and maturing and now doing it as my career, I've recognized that it's not so much about the sport
Mm-hmm.
that I love, but the experiences, the people, the influence
Yeah.
that the sport has given me, which now, I can still be all that or learn all that or be influenced, obviously, but I just love providing that now to the team.
Yeah.
Like it's what drives me.
Yeah. And I love, like, like we were talking earlier about, I came back to volleyball and seeing college volleyball, it is the cool and really neat aspect of it is the bench players. It's not like other sports where the bench are just sitting there, or, from soccer
Right.
or basketball. Your bench, are active. They're cheering, they're doing
Yeah.
dances. And I think that is another aspect of, like, even though you may not be, on the court, you're still contributing. You're still
Mhm.
hyping up people. You're involved. And I think that's such a wonderful aspect of the game.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that too, because like I never know what they're doing um until like I see pictures or video
Yeah.
or whatever. Because like obviously my back is to them all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, whatever you're seeing, like I leave that up to like, the captains and
Yeah.
the, the assistant coaches to be like, hey, if anything's inappropriate back there, which I highly doubt that they'll do, but you just let me know, but I do it,
Yeah.
like be a part of it. But you
Excellent.
can feel it too. Like without even me looking at them, I can feel their energy coming
Yeah.
through my backside too. So yeah, they pride themselves
Yeah.
on their energy for sure.
Excellent. And now, back in middle school, high school, when you were playing volleyball, did you play club as well, or really just high school ball and moved on to college from there?
Yeah, I did play club ball. I played my first club season actually going into high school. So that was like my first experience. And that was just with like a local club. It
Yeah.
was called Glass City Volleyball. That was like back in Toledo. At that time it was kind of a grassroots program. And then after my freshman year, I played for Toledo Volleyball Club, which they're still functioning. There's a couple people that are still there from when I was there. And yeah, it was pretty awesome. And that was the more of the travel, like it
Yeah.
wasn't the regional. I mean, we were I think went on my first plane ride being with
Oh,
this
wow.
team. I remember I think we were going to like Minneapolis or something. Um, and yeah, and fortunately, I was in like a pool or a time period in which we had some pretty high caliber athletes that were playing at some big time programs for volleyball.
Yeah.
Um, so that was just the place to go. Like if you wanted to excel and get looked at and do all those things,
Yeah.
it was TVC.
Nice. And now, would you say that led to a lot of your development and more exposure to volleyball to allow you to succeed onto that next level?
Yeah, I would definitely leave it up to that. I mean, I leave it up to my parents. I mean, back then, like spending, I don't even know what the cost was, but let's just say it was like maybe
Yeah.
$3,000, $3,500 for and it's probably like $7,500 now. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that up to you. So thank you for your investment in your daughter. But yeah, I mean, for them to do that, to put that much money down for their child to do what they love, I think was a big investment. And so they, and I think from a parent's perspective now, I think they wanted their money's worth of like, how are you going to develop my child?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, going to these national qualifiers that are still around today. So we went to Big South, we went to Northern Lights, we went to NEQ, we did all these things that have been around for years. We went to nationals, like those are things like we qualified. So those are some big moments that allowed us to be exposed.
Yeah.
And again, fortunately, I was a part of a team that had other high caliber athletes.
Yeah.
So, I had a teammate that went to Minnesota. I had a teammate that went to UCLA. I had a teammate that went to Stanford, like all these things that, not a lot of people get to have that experience, but yeah, it was a big influence on my next launch.
Excellent. And now, when did you graduate from setter to outside hitter?
Well, there was another position after setter and then another position after that.
Oh,
So
okay.
setter, I was in middle school. Yeah, I mean, I know why, but I don't know why. Like, I was one of those kids, like, I just want to play. You
Yeah.
put me wherever, I'll do it. And then, in high school, I'm 6'1", and I was probably 6 feet at my freshman year.
Oh,
So,
wow.
back then, and not always the case now, but back then, like the tallest just goes in the middle,
Yeah.
right? Because from a defensive perspective, you just go back
Yeah.
and forth, back and forth. So I was a middle in high school. And then actually I was a middle a majority of my high school career. I was also a middle a majority of my club,
Oh,
my
wow.
club experience. Yeah. And again, like I could care less. I just wanted to play. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you want me to do whatever, I'll do whatever. And then when things started to come about with recruiting, I I was athletic enough and good enough to probably play in the middle position at the next level, but it would be at a smaller school.
Yeah.
But I had my eyes and my aspirations to go to a bigger school. Um, and again, like now that I think back, like I didn't go to a Power Five, but we played against Power Fives and we beat them, so
Yeah.
it didn't really matter. And so it wasn't until my senior year where I started to get some exposure on the left side. Like I played middle still, but I went and hit on the left every once in a while because then that's what I ended up doing. I ended
Yeah.
up playing left side, and my then coach Jeff Carlson, who is now actually back at Ohio University, took a chance on me. He's like, "Hey, you're going to play on the left," and rest is history.
Oh. This is showing my age. So when I was playing, we were
Mhm.
it was the power and the weak side. When did they start changing it to right side and left side? My daughter came home and said, "Oh yeah, we're the pin hitters." Like, what is a pin hitter? That's so when did the
Yeah.
verbiage change from right side and left side from power to weak side?
I,
Or maybe it
I
was a Canadian thing. I don't know.
it could be Canadian, Barry. I'm not quite sure. Like
Yeah.
it, yeah, it's yeah, I think now I think the game has definitely evolved. Like there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Language wise, like I think now before it was like, the outsides, and it may just be a philosophy thing too, but the
Yeah.
outsides were always just the ball control, the
Yeah.
go-tos, and you're not really, I mean, Do I think that that's still the case in most cases? Yes, just because of out of system, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Mm-hmm.
are chucking balls to the pins, but
Right.
now, I mean, but now you're able to set an out of system ball to the right side.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of disparity between like defense from the right pin and defense from the left side. And, and then even with the middles, like the middle position is crucial.
Yeah.
And not only, I would even be hard to say what is better or worse, because I don't think there's really any sort of discrepancy between the two, but like, your middles we're relying on them to block.
Yeah.
Like their defense and their schemes and their minds and their reading and their anticipation is super, super important. But also like, hey, if a middle can transition the ball and we can dig it to the
Yeah.
middle of the floor, like we can be pretty lethal. Like, and
Absolutely.
so the game itself has evolved. So even from language to how the game is ran. And I also think it's kind of like cyclical too. Like I kind of I don't think of it like wardrobes, right? But I
Yeah.
wish I would have kept some pants when I was in high school because now they're coming back.
Yeah.
But I do remember like when I was in college, we ran the Bic a lot. Like we ran the back row a ton. And then it just kind of like stopped for a
Mm-hmm.
second. Um, and again, like, do I know why? I don't really know.
Yeah.
I'm not that much. My mind doesn't like sit there and analyze all those things, but it's definitely, now exposing it on television
Mm-hmm.
and seeing what these young women are doing on a regular basis and how the game's evolved and like, what are we plugging from the men's side to the women's side to the beach side to the international side, and
Right.
how can we just interlock all these things together, and to make the game as elite and as fast as possible,
Yeah.
is pretty remarkable. So yeah, incorporating that back row is, you get somebody who can have that be their go-to and their niche,
Yeah.
it becomes really lethal.
Oh, absolutely. And now, so we jumped ahead, but, from after high school, you went to Ohio.
Mhm.
What was that recruiting process like? What made you pick Ohio?
Yeah. It sounds cliche, but it's true. I'm a huge relationship person. I pride myself on my relationships. Like I love feel like I'm a feeling person.
Mm-hmm.
I have high intuition. And when something feels right, that's what I lean on my decision making
Yeah.
most of the time. And sometimes that's a downfall, but other times that's also a great advantage. And I'm a competitive individual. And, as I mentioned before, like I wanted to play at the highest level possible when I was in high school. And just like all, 16-year-olds back then, they think that everybody is great and that you're the greatest and everybody should want you and there's no reasons why. And so I was kind of like second in command and again, like I was in middle, right? So I
Yeah.
wasn't touching 10-2 or 10-5 at that time in the middle. They needed size, and they just didn't see me enough on the left pin to make a commitment on their end.
Yeah.
And so people, like Ohio State told me no, and Illinois told me no, and Notre Dame was like, I'm not quite sure. And Georgia Tech was on my list, and went to visits on all
Yeah.
these places. And I was just like, I'm not sure. Like, why, people they're not seeing what I'm seeing,
Right.
and they don't know. And again, like that's now being in that position to recruit, like
Yeah.
I get it. And then Ohio just came out of nowhere, like no joke. I'm from Ohio,
Yeah.
right? And I remember back then we got hard mail. So like we got snail mail. So
Yeah.
like when you'd go to the mailbox and you'd be like, heck yeah, I get 5 letters from colleges. This is awesome. Because we didn't have, I mean, we had emails, but we had AOL Messenger.
Exactly.
Like, we were sitting there on AIM, like, typing out to our friend, our
Yeah.
coaches, or whatever. So a lot of that initiated contact was through snail mail. And I just kept getting all this mail from Ohio. And I'm like, where the heck is Ohio University? This is not Ohio State. And I was like, cool. And they insisted, they pushed and they pushed and they pushed. And they finally got to the point where I finally like looked them up.
Yeah.
I like saw what they're all about. I went on a visit and they poured every single ounce of their energy into me.
Wow.
And I mean, our walking tour was like 2.5 hours. Like I remember my brother coming on my visit. My dad was on my visit. They made them feel like they were at home. The girls like completely just took me under their wing and was like, you're coming with us. And then I obviously watched them play and I was like, I can play at this level. Like, I feel like I can contribute
Yeah.
here. And yeah. And they told me I was their number one. And like, okay, if that would have been somebody else's, like if it was timing, like maybe it was a little bit of timing, but
Yeah.
like I was just no and no and no and no. And then finally somebody came about and was like,
We love you.
you're it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I didn't commit on the time. I didn't commit
Yeah.
there. I don't remember exactly the timeline. I remember committing earlier. So like at that time, we could reach out to them and then we could communicate. So like I was having conversations with the coaches when I was a sophomore in high school, and where now we can't do that.
Right.
And, I made some commitments. I went down and watched them play. They came up to UT, to Toledo. I watched them play there. And yeah, I was in at BG because that's like 20 minutes from my parents' house from Bowling Green. And yeah, and I remember telling my dad and being like, hey dad, I think I'm ready to commit. And he's like, all right, we'll call him up. And yeah, that's what
Wow.
happened. And the recruiting process was fast. From what I remember, it
Yeah.
was early. I think, and now being in our shoes, in the coaching shoes, like, I remember, and I still see some of the coaches that recruited me.
Oh,
Like when I'm out
wow.
recruiting, like I have a lot of relationships with people because they just were at different institutions.
Yeah.
Some of them recruited me. Like it's crazy. And they're like, did you get timelined? Like, did they snatch you up? They do something wrong? Like, and I was like, no, no, I don't think so. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, I set on the fact that like it was the place for me and it felt right.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened.
Excellent. And it turned out wonderful because you made their Hall of Fame, correct?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was, I tell this now, like, the recruits ask me why I coach and why I do the things I do.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was because of Ohio. Like it was hard. Like, don't get me wrong. Like there were some moments I was like, wow. I remember that,
Yeah.
for memory. But also it was such a great blend of like, you have your volleyball, you have your
Mm-hmm.
school, and you have your social life.
Yeah.
And I think if you obviously need balance and all, but like you want to be really good in every section. And it's hard for a team to do that. Like if you have a team that's like crushing the social life and crushing the volleyball life,
Yeah.
they're probably in some academic situation and someone is doing something and they're able not to play, right?
Yeah.
Or you have high academics and high volleyball and no social life. There's some issues there. Like,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't say issues. I think that's wrong for me to say, but like
It
that's a part of
affects.
college too, is just figuring out who you are.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, right, you've got academics and social and no volleyball. Like we're here to play
No.
volleyball.
Right.
So um, I honestly believe that in my experience at Ohio, we did high social, high academics, and high volleyball.
Yeah.
And it showed, like it showed. And don't get me wrong, we were kicked out of practice. People got hurt. People were disciplined. Like we had all that all the time.
Yeah.
But we won a lot of championships and we went to the NCAA tournament every single year. And we won, like we won regular season all 4 years there. We won 3 out of 4 tournaments. We got beat in the championship one year. That was devastating.
Yeah.
And yeah, at one point in my career, we were ranked 13th in the country.
Wow.
And it was, I mean, and that's the experience that I'm like, I've been a part of that.
Right.
And if I could relate Ohio to UConn,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of similar. Like, I know that UConn has the brand, like our men and women's basketball team is elite. Our field hockey team is elite. Our football's trying to grow. Like, there are so many programs here that are on this championship level with lacrosse. It's ranked. You've got hockey's. I mean, you've got every single team is like on the cusp of like nationally ranked. Track and field. I mean, you name it. And volleyball, like we're able to get our foot in the door because of our name.
Right.
But we haven't created that championship. We create a championship experience, but we just haven't won a championship in a really long time.
Yeah.
And that's where I see the grittiness and the chip on the shoulder and the people that have been told no because they're not good enough to play at the best level possible. I believe that those young women can come here and we can just tell everybody, I told you so.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I love about UConn is, and I think that's our X factor. Like it has to be.
Excellent. And now, looking back on Ohio, what, is there a certain memory that sticks out most?
Well, there's a couple things. Like, I remember from a game perspective, there's nothing like a conference championship. We, at that time, like we won regular season, but we had a tournament every single year. So we'd go to the tournament, and a couple of years they were actually in Toledo at the Seagate Center at that time it was named, and we'd go. It was like a neutral site. We'd all go. It was very championship feeling. And we won that. And that was just like, there's nothing better than like getting game points and just like getting on your knees and like, celebrating with your teammates. The NCAA tournament is a whole nother level of pressure. Probably by my junior and senior year, it felt more of like, this is it. We're ready for this. And then my senior year, we finally got past the first round. So we would go into the tournament and, and unfortunately because of our conference and RPI, and we'd always get paired with like the 1 or 2 seed, and we'd always go to Penn State. Always. And I think like it's either Penn State or Purdue. And we'd always go there because it's always by region a little bit in the beginning. And so it was hard to get past the first round. And then finally my senior year, we had Notre Dame my first round, and the coach that was there recruited me, and I knew all the girls because like all the girls I went to camp with, and little old Ohio Bobcats come into play, and we just ripped them. And it was like the best feeling ever. Like it's like just the competitor,
right?
You're like looking at them and I'm shaking their hands, and and like Debbie Brown at the time, who was the coach there, who's absolutely remarkable, and I give her a big hug after the game, and I'm just like, she's like, she just says like just good things, like, I'm just so proud of you, like, you really
nice.
did, or things like that. And then the next match was the match to go to the Sweet 16, and we played Michigan, and we were paired up at a time where I was like, the chances, like we're actually put in a position where we could go to the Sweet 16. And obviously Mark Rosen was there at the time, and we're in Ann Arbor, so like heavy Herman family came up to support because it was only about 45 minutes away. And my family's a big Michigan family anyways. I said that now, but we're supposed to be Ohio State fans and we weren't.
Right.
And we went there and we were up 2-0 in the games. And at that time we had a 10-minute break in between sets 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And we were just clawing to get back. Like, third set we lost. I can't remember the specific score. Fourth set we lost, and we're getting to the fifth set. And we lost, I think we lost 15-13 in the fifth. And I remember I was in back row, and the setter, last name was Zimmerman, I think. And she went to she did a 2-shoot, and she just dumped it on the second and right in the donut. And I remember just like laying out in middle back, and like there were three of us that just kind of collided. And, as always, like those things, like we get picked those things up every day in
Yeah.
training. And then this one fell and they won. And I remember just
Ah,
laying there and just
yeah.
devastated,
So close.
so close to do it. And again, like it's, you remember those moments from a game perspective, but I really do remember the practices and the training, and like I remember like the mindset behind things too. Just like I remember being in practice and being like, this game, like even for myself, I was I was the outside, I was the go-to player, and um, I remember like it, like channeling my inner like manifestation of a game. I remember those things, like being like, Ellen, this is it. You're envisioning on the other side of the net, like you've got 2-6-4 blockers over there, like you will kill this ball. Like, and I just remember those
Yeah.
feelings inside of me that like, that's what I'm trying to help and teach. Like, again, like nobody told me to do that. Nobody taught me to do that. Like
Yeah.
that was just my own, that was just me. And
Yeah.
I get that I can try, but it's not up to me to do that to help my team or to
Right.
help my players. But like that, like I can't say that that's what it takes,
Mm-hmm.
but the only thing I know is that that's what it took me to get there. And but those are some pretty core memories I remember from my experience.
Yeah.
And again, the people, like I can't tell you enough about the people. Like you have to have people that support you, that encourage you, that boost you up,
Yeah.
um, but also push you and tell you like you're wrong, like, and it's okay, like, and so that's, I think there's just it's a big concoction of memories
Yeah.
that just have been a part of why I do what I do, because it shaped me to who I am. And um yeah, and that's why I do what I do, is because it's like, why not?
Yeah. And now, what advice would you have for that kid that's coming to college right now or in the fall? Something that you wish you knew then that, head coach UConn Ellen knows now.
I think when it comes to, the players that come to UConn, and I want them, and not everybody thinks like I do. So like, and that's something like I'm continually trying to always be better. Like nobody's going to think the way I have to tell myself like, Ellen, that's okay. Like, it's okay. She didn't react the
Mm-hmm.
way that you wanted her to react. Like it's not about you, it's about them,
Right.
and, um, I just feel if I had the chance, like I would like for people to really just put their guard down in some ways, to, and I'm saying that, like, I understand, like, a part of that is maturity
Mm-hmm.
too, and like being through stuff, like you have to understand, but it's just, I wish there was just this like blank, like really this blank canvas of coming into school and just being really inquisitive and curious
Yeah.
about anything, like, and again, like let's like relate it to volleyball,
Yeah.
like about volleyball, like what how can I be my best, and take nuggets from any person that you get.
Yeah.
And then also too is college is a boiling pot of growing social beings.
Yeah.
And it is really, really hard. And, I think when high school students come to college, like they're so used to one way,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's because their parents made it easier on them.
Right.
Um, maybe they were completely independent, who knows? Maybe they've never been around a variety of different people.
Yeah.
Like
Small
everything is different.
town. Now you're
Yes.
in your classroom where there's 400 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I wish I had the opportunity to just have like really authentic conversations with people.
Yeah. All right.
And authentic means like listening to them and
Mm-hmm.
hearing, like really like hearing them, and then also being able to like converse and also feel to be heard at
Yeah.
the same time.
After college, you were part of the national team. You got to go to play over in China. What was that
I did.
experience?
Wild.
I bet.
Wild. Yeah, I mean, I was a kid that I got into college and I was like, I Olympics, like that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to the Olympics. That's what I want to do. I want to play pro. Like I was the kid that high volleyball school was important because I knew I needed to get good grades.
Yeah.
I got good grades, but like I had aspirations to play volleyball first, and then my job was going to happen after that.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity, like even during college, we had national team tryouts. So at that time, now it's called the collegiate national team. Now it's called the collegiate national team. When I was in college, it was like the A2 team. So
Okay.
like basically what we would do is we'd go to our national team tryouts, and it was specifically just like current college
Okay.
athletes. And even if you were done with eligibility, like if you were finished your senior year, you
Yeah.
did it in the spring, you could go try out still. But even freshmen could go too.
Oh, wow.
So we tried out, and I started at my junior year. So I went my junior, actually, did I go my junior year? I might have went my sophomore year. Anyways, somewhere in there. We went to try out and I made the team. And at that time, we went to Georgia Tech. We went down to Georgia Tech's area, and it worked out to happen in May
Mm-hmm.
because that's when, yeah, we just went to train, and it was a dead period. Everybody's was out of school already.
Yeah.
So like it worked out. We stayed in the dorms. It was fun. We trained for a week, and then wherever the adult nationals were, we went and competed at the adult nationals. So we'd play against all these like other, pro people,
Yeah.
adults that wanted to be in the open division. And yeah, and that's kind of how it went. And that was how I started my adventure in the national team. And then after I was done with my collegiate national experience, and I did that again at Minnesota.
Yeah.
We did it at Minnesota. It was great. And then I got a call from Hugh McCutcheon, who was actually formerly at Minnesota, who's now not coaching at all. I think he's a consultant with the USA team or something.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, hey, do you want to come out and train in the summer? And then if you make the list to go to China, you make the list to go to China. I was like,
wow,
sweet. So I wish I would have done it longer to feel what my role or my identity was with the national team. Like if I had read about it, I wish I would have done that longer. But I hopped right on the pro train.
Yeah.
And again, like that's what we did. Like we'd go to the national team in the summertime, we'd go play pro.
Yeah.
Come back, train in the summertime, go play pro. And then like that's how you venture, like that's how you qualify the Olympics, and that's just how that function works.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I went overseas and I loved my experience. And my first round in Germany was iffy.
Yeah.
Like it was a different level. It was literally all volleyball. Like you just wake up at 8, you play volleyball, you go to bed at 8, and you start over again.
Oh, wow.
Like it was intense. And being a high social person, it didn't really fit for me.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because there's only my one experience. And so I got into coaching and actually came to UCONN for a year. And well, actually, hold on a second. Yes, I did that. And then I was like, you know what? I want to get back at it. I just wasn't ready. Like I didn't do any of my homework. I didn't do any of that stuff. I just thought that's what it seemed like I should do.
Yeah.
And I still had a really hard passion for the sport. And fortunately, like I was training most of the time anyways. I was playing with the team. I was coaching and playing with the team. So I didn't really lose touch.
Yeah.
And, at the time, the former coach, I don't know, she was hoping I'd stay longer, obviously, but I pulled a selfish act, and I wanted to keep playing. And then I went to Switzerland and played for 2 seasons in Switzerland, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like it was a great balance between your social, your competitive and win mentality. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was kind of a little bit of the adventure of my professional career. And the USA pipeline kind of vanished in my review mirror, and my
Yeah.
priorities changed a little bit. And yeah, but I wouldn't take anything back.
Nice.
It was awesome.
Now, was Germany the way it was just because of the team, or the league was set up that way versus you had, Switzerland was just, like you said, it was a different balance?
It's hard for me to say because I played for a team in Hamburg.
Yeah.
And it could have just been the team. I mean, the
Yeah.
league I played in the first league, so which was the top league. But yeah, I don't know. It was also in a really like, I mean, this is my own opinion again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm up in the northern part of Germany, and it's similar to Connecticut in the sense of like daylight.
Yeah.
So it's like dark in the morning, dark at night. Completely different than anything I've ever experienced in my entire life up to that point.
Yeah.
And, just the people were just so rigid too. Like they were
Yes.
just like, this is my life. I'm black and white and there's no gray. And I'm like, here, I'm a gray person. I like to have fun.
Yeah.
And not to say that the people that I was around didn't have fun, because I still have lifelong relationships with a few of my teammates that
Yeah.
I met there. Yeah, it was not what I thought it would have been.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's
So
fair. But
yeah.
now, what was training and practice like at the pro levels versus coming back and practicing with the national? Was it like a night and day from like how they, approach the training and practice versus, over there?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is yes, different. We're athletes, so we've got to take care of our bodies. So usually in the mornings, practices were a little bit more like down. We weren't
Yeah.
jumping a lot, doing a lot of ball control, a lot of floor defense. And then like in the afternoon, that's when the team was around. So like from a national team perspective, we had morning training and then afternoon training. We had a break for lunch, and that's kind of how it was. And I remember my first practice with the national team, and we did this like ball control series. And like you talk about touches, like our warm up was like we had to get the ball over the net like 100 times, in just like from a passing perspective, then from a setting perspective, then from a down ball
Oh, wow.
perspective. And I was just like, it was like a 45-minute warm up. And I was like, that was just the warm up. Like that's, I mean, my head, like, at
Right.
22 years old, I was like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
got it. And where like the pro side, and this is not every team, so it could be
Yeah.
different, but I was the pro, I was a professional. We had a couple other teammates that were the professionals, and then we had other teammates that like lived there,
Yeah.
like they're German, or they've migrated there and they've lived there, and they have a real job, and then they do volleyball on the side.
Yeah.
So it was really kind of like a small training sessions in the mornings. And then the afternoons were the team
Yeah.
practice.
Okay.
But kind of similar. And then we'd watch film, and we'd have events we'd have to go to. And yeah, unfortunately, like the experience is different. Like some of the team that lives there, like you get to know their parents
Yeah.
and their friends and their family, because they live there.
Yeah.
It was cool.
And now for that, that kid that's wrapping up college, thinking about pro, what advice do you have for them? And also now that we have our own pro league here starting in the US, that's super fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, God, again, like these are good questions because I want to answer them as best as I can. The advice for them is like, if they want to continue to keep playing to the next level, I think I shouldn't say putting them, because obviously their parents help. Like it's not all about the parents, but the parents need to be just as bought in. But their job, the job as a parent is to be the encourager, the supporter, maybe even a little bit of that level-headedness and being like, what's realistic for you?
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that's a part of it too, in figuring out what is realistically capable from a skill perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think like right now, even in the state of Connecticut and in New England, like there's a couple athletes out there that could play at the next level, at the Division I level. But, right now we're kind of blending, we're growing the sport, and
Yeah.
we've got a handful of athletes that can really do some good things at the NAIA or the Division III level, or a Division II level even, and maybe even a low Division I.
Yeah.
Like it's growing. So I think expressing, and for those high school students that like really want to play at the next level, and they don't really care in what capacity, really ask your coaches to be like, where can I play? Like,
Yeah.
and what experience do you want? Like, do you want to be that support role where you're there, you're the practice person,
Yeah.
like you're there pushing your teammates to the next level, because that's your job. And a big part of a role of a teammate is making sure that you're pushing them. And but could you get on the floor in the capacity you want? Maybe not. Or do you want to play?
Right.
So I think it's a little bit of that, like a little dose of reality, I think
Yeah.
is important in an honest conversation. And again, it's not because they're bad, it's not because they're great. It's just, what do you want?
Yeah.
And always being open. Like, I think being coachable, um, you know, asking questions, and not only obviously to the coaches, the person that's coaching you, but like being an incredible teammate is so important.
Yeah.
It's so important. Like I can't tell you how many camps I've worked, and like we have camper of the day, like we do camper of the day. And a lot of it is not even about how good they are. It's literally because of their attitude and
Yeah.
helping somebody, or it could be just the connection that, I've been coaching her for the past 2 days, and everything I say, or I've asked, or she listens and she does.
Yeah.
And those things are attributes for us coaches that are really, really important, because a lot of it is not, the problem isn't the skill. It's the intangibles of
Yeah.
who you are and your character of who you are.
Yeah. Absolutely. And now, so after your pro career, that sunsetted. What was it about coaching that was your calling?
Hmm. I definitely think it was a calling. Like, I think the way you say that is true and valid. Yeah, I mean, kind of like what I said earlier, my experience before, but I've always been around teams. Like, I've always been around a competitive atmosphere, um, like since I was young. And I like it's that love,
Yeah.
like I couldn't imagine getting into a job that like I just not that I don't know anything about, but just didn't summarize who I was as a person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I started. And I have grown immensely. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about how people work
Mm-hmm.
and how they function, and how to create an environment that's collaborative and supported. Um, I've also learned what not to do too.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a vocation, right?
Yep.
It's literally like it's the love
Yep.
for it. I don't view my job as a job. I view it as a hobby.
Yeah.
And um I enjoy I enjoy coming into work every day, and I enjoy communicating with my team and my staff. I enjoy collaborating. I don't enjoy tough conversations, but I understand the growth that happens after it.
Yeah.
Um, and higher education, like formal, just formidable years for 18 to
Exactly. Yeah.
22-year-old women, and providing them the opportunity to live life through sport, I think irreplaceable.
Absolutely. Yep. And now, what was your path to UConn? You said earlier you came here back in like 2014, 2015, and then you came back later to, more involved on the coaching side. How did you end up here?
Yeah, I think like randomly when I came in and back in 2011, I just was like job searching.
Yeah.
I was like, boom, Connecticut. And coming from Ohio, I was like, it's so far away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't think that at that time, but like I remember growing up and being like, whoa, Connecticut. That's like New York City,
Yeah.
like easy busyness. And then when I got here, I was like, wow, cows, this is different.
Out in stores. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I'd come back for a relationship and it kind of worked out in a
Yeah.
way. Um, yeah, and I had been kind of local, so like I had kind of snuck you know, my interest into UConn anyways
Mm-hmm.
because I was around. And basically during the change of one staff to another staff, they had reached out to me and asked if I could be interim until they found somebody
Oh,
else.
wow.
It was like, and I'd already worked here, right? So
Yeah.
like I had come back. So like they already knew kind of I was in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah. I was in real estate at the time. Like I thought I was going to get my real estate license, which was kind of not the same as coaching at all. It was
Yeah.
just competitive and whatever, and not a 9 to 5. And they're like, Ellen, you want to be the interim? I was like, sure, let's do it. And then fortunately, the gentleman they hired, Chris Grunwald,
Yeah.
um, talk about the small world of volleyball. He knew a former coach that I got recruited from.
Okay.
And this was a Georgia Tech coach. Her name's Sally, and they were super close. They were like best friends. And he had asked her, like, hey, I have Ellen Herman here. She's interested in the job. And she's like, hire
Yeah.
her, do it. And um, that was my step in.
Oh, wow.
And again, like this is to show like you never know when things are going to circle around and the impression you make on people. And I tell that to our team too. It's
Yeah.
like, you never want to leave, any door shut. Like you want to make sure that if there is any sort of time where, it doesn't feel right or doesn't look good or
Yeah.
doesn't happen, like you never want to burn a bridge. And some
Absolutely.
people, some people do, and that's
Yeah.
up to them, and that it is what it is. But like, you just never want to leave anything unturned. And because of my experience, of my recruiting experience, how I handled my recruiting
Mm-hmm.
experience to this individual, it paid off in the end and
Right.
got my foot in the door here. And
Yeah, because you
the
could have
rest
been
is history.
angry at, oh, screw you guys for not, taking me in. But no, you just, yeah, never burn a bridge. It's too small of a world.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, what was it like coming back to UConn? And, it sounds like the culture you've established now is fantastic. It's open, it's two-way communication. Was that here before you got here? Or was that something you had to grow?
Well, first I had the advantage of being an assistant coach
Yeah.
first. So like when I got the job as head coach, I had already been here.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was the advantage. I already knew who the team was, how the infrastructure worked here from a university side of things. I was a part of everybody. I was the recruiting coordinator, so I was a part of everybody's recruiting
Oh,
experience.
nice.
So it was a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of an advantage. Like I already knew people's stuff. Um, as naturally as any assistant coach, like as the same with my assistants now. You know, you I'm not saying that this is the case, but like you're responsible, but you're not responsible. Like you have no reason to not share the things you need to be sharing with your boss, or like
Right.
when it came to decision making, and you help a lot, like you're the task oriented people, like you're getting delegated things, you got to complete stuff. And so I knew how to work it. Like I
Yeah.
knew what the responsibilities were with just like the day-to-day stuff. Um, but then I had my own opinions and thoughts on like the culture and
Yeah.
like how we navigate conversations. And do we lay down standards? Do we have core values? What is our line of communication? What's our expectation in the gym? And I had my own opinions.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that was a part of that, is that that was something I don't know. I
It's a
wanted
part
to
of
get
you.
out of my players.
Yeah.
You know, this is a time where you come into the gym and you leave all of your crap there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was not just on me either. Like, I had a staff that was completely supportive and had autonomy and had their own style of leadership. I had, when I first got the job, we had a really core group of young women that saw the vision that I essentially saw and
Yeah.
believed in it. And again, it goes down to that messaging component of just consistently showing up
Yeah.
all the time and showing back up too. It's not like, days aren't easy. And it's, again, like, showing back up to do it again, is hard work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I don't have a magic like equation to disclose like how we got there.
Yeah.
But what our values are of the team is we put the team first. That is number one.
Mm-hmm.
We communicate.
Yeah.
So we have to communicate authentically. We're consistent. So whether that's in our behaviors, our attitude, our mindset, our performance, like, we're consistent. And then our last is we value growth. And we understand we're not going to be perfect every day,
Yeah.
but we're here to grow. I'm the commitment we've made to come to UConn is that when we come in as freshmen, we are not leaving as the same person we came in as a freshman.
Yeah. Nice.
Like, we are more knowledgeable, we're more confident, we're stronger, we're a better teammate, and of course, like, we leave and we're champions.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it is. And yeah, so I think that's just what we say all the time, and
Yeah.
it takes everybody to buy into it. And it's not just me, it's everybody that's a part of that. That's from our athletic trainers to our strength coach to our academic advisor to the environment we're
Yeah.
in. Like, I mean, I was telling this to Emma Workmeister yesterday, because they went to the basketball game to watch Creighton and UConn play, and
Yeah.
the men are now ranked number one, and they crushed Creighton. And I was just like, she was coming in the office and I was like, isn't it just crazy that, like, we're a part of a department where, like, people are ranked number one and, like, are national champions? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's like, some institutions never get that. Never.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they see that these are their peers. Like,
Right.
these are their peers they see every day. So yeah, it's a pretty special place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you touched on community. We hear that word communicate a lot, during our conversation here. And that was one of the things, like, I think that is fantastic about what you have there. Like, when KB was on, she was talking about when she first came, when she left Houston, came here, and it was like, you asked her a question during practice or something. She goes, "You're asking me a question? You're not just telling me?" And that just, like, sort of like blew her mind that, like, yeah, this is the way how you approach things is such a fantastic way to get, the most out of your players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, practice is learning.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes people learn by being told what to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't disagree with that, but in my opinion, is that the best way to learn?
Yeah.
Probably not. You have to ask questions because, again, like, you want to be painted a picture of your athletes' minds, right? Like, again, my coaching style meshes with most of our team, right? They know how I coach. That's why they came here, or
Right.
it's something with our staff. But doesn't mean they are you. Like, so you have to figure out how they work,
Mm-hmm.
how they process, what they're focusing on too. And sometimes they're focusing on the absolutely wrong thing, or they're validating they're validating it. Like, so yeah, I mean, we try to ask, like, I always, granted, I'm not great at it. So like, I try. I try my best to always just lead with a question,
Mm-hmm.
um, with what or how.
Yeah.
Like, how did you come to that decision?
Right.
What did you see?
Yeah.
Uh, how did that make you feel? Like,
Yeah.
how do we get ourselves out of that? Like, how would you make another choice? Like, and not to use why,
Mm-hmm.
because why can provide a defense mechanism. Like,
Yeah.
well, why did you do this? Like, that me doing, why did you do this,
You're
is a
putting your guard up.
completely,
Yep.
yeah, is a completely different situation to how, how did you do this?
Yeah.
Like, there's two different ways to go about that.
Yeah.
And especially when tensions are high,
Mm-hmm.
pressure is high, all these things, like, you're going at it as a coach unbiasedly. And again, like, you want them to be, you can help them,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not playing. So
Yeah.
how can you allow them to just work through things for themselves? How can they problem solve?
Yep.
Because I would love to sit back in a match and just, that would be great.
Yep.
But again, like, I also love interaction too, but like, that's just how we try to do it to
Yep.
get the best out of them.
Let's talk a bit about the season. So the season had the championship in December, and now January the kids are filtering back. So what phase of what happens during this sort of went January till summer phase from a team standpoint?
Yeah, so actually we have a team meeting today. We're having a culture talk. And we've had a couple of other meetings before. We've established a leadership council. So we've got a leadership council that are representatives of the team. And it was evaluated from a lot of evaluation, a lot of thought process behind it. It wasn't just a random pick out of the hat. And and then just kind of getting back into the swing of things of just like classes and whatnot. So we kind of kick things off with just getting a reset button in some ways of
Yeah.
like, because our preparation for this upcoming season happens now. It's
Right.
not like right after they get home from summer,
Yeah.
in preseason. And so it looks, from a calendar side, we go into our 8-hour segment, which is a little bit more individual based, position based. And then once those days are over, we head into our 20-hour segments, which is our more traditional, like, practice every day,
Oh, okay.
2.5 hours. They're also lifting quite a bit as well. And I shouldn't say quite a bit. It is more than what we do in the fall.
Yeah.
But this is when you see some transformative body changes too. Like, the freshmen are getting stronger. They're like,
Yeah.
holy crap, I actually can like bench 120 pounds. Like, there's all these things that happen that, again, like, the purpose of lifting and is to make sure that they're maximizing their performance on the floor.
Yeah.
They're not here to be weight lifters. I think some of them thoroughly enjoy lifting, but it's keeping them on the floor. Like,
Yeah.
I want them to be able to make an incredible move and let their body make their range of motion and get right back up and feel good about it. Like,
Yeah.
hell, if I would do that right now, I'd probably break 5 bones,
Yeah.
because I'm not on a lifting regimen and I'm also 35. But like, that's also a part of it too. Is just, this is the off season and this is where we see most growth
Yeah.
too. So yeah, it'll be trickled in with some team activities, team talks, leadership council meetings, check-ins, obviously development on the floor and
Yeah.
in the gym. And that'll happen all the way up until April.
Yeah.
So we'll be
Okay.
in it for a little bit. Their weekends, we have 4 competition dates. So we're allowed 4 dates to where we can go compete against other
Oh,
teams.
nice.
So I think right now we've got a couple lined up, like playing Bryant and playing Harvard and whatnot. And then they go home for summer. And summer is like middle of May,
Yeah.
all of June, and they come in like, I think this calendar year is like July 11th or 12th or 13th, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And then they're here for summer and going right into preseason.
Wow.
So they take a class in the summer, they work out with our strength coach, they do open gyms, and then, because we can't have any hands-on activity with them,
Yeah.
then we start with preseason and we get after it.
And you guys, that's the one thing about the fall sport. You guys start running. There's really not much of a window for, especially freshmen coming into that new environment, leaving their small town or wherever they're from, getting, acclimated to that, and then, going from high school club volleyball to college volleyball in a matter of a few weeks. It's got to be hard for them.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I didn't really recognize it so much until like, I mean, I knew why it was so important to come for summer.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize like we just don't get it's obvious, but we don't get a lot of time, like you said. And
Right.
like the spring sports, like they get their freshmen acclimated, they get college under their belt, they get a whole semester,
Right.
they get to train. I'm like, shoot, spring sports, they obviously have their
Right.
issues too. Like, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, yeah, then that all makes sense. Like you get a whole semester to just break them in, and then you really have a good idea of like how much development they get, and
Yeah.
like it's a whole different avenue.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but yeah, that I would agree. It's a little crazy.
Yeah. And now, from a senior standpoint, like the KBs and whatnot, who are moving on, are they still involved with practicing and sort of helping those the freshmen? And even now, I think you got a couple of players that are just, I guess they started in January, right?
Yeah, yeah. So usually like right after the fall of everybody's senior year, they live their last semester with no volleyball.
Yeah.
They live the college life. If some of them, I think, KB, for instance, like she wants to stay in volleyball.
Yeah.
And because she was a COVID kid too, she was only here for the semester. So she's already graduated. She's already back home.
Oh,
Like she's trying
wow.
to get a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, someone like Sierra, she's taken like one class right
Yeah.
now. So it's different for everybody. But usually that last semester they're living college to their lives. And
Nice.
if they want to have aspirations to play pro, like we keep that door open for them if they
Yeah.
want to come train. They can. We typically try to separate them from like the current team.
Yeah.
But if we come back and have like a competitive day or we're playing, like we have them come back and play because usually the spring roster is a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need people to help, and we have practice guys that come in and play as well. And then obviously in this case, like we actually have Anna and Deja, who are incoming freshmen. They're the 24 class
Yeah.
that had the advantage to come in early. They graduated early from high school. And they're here training, and
Excellent.
this is the first for us. Like this has not happened in our program yet.
Yeah.
And yeah, really excited. So we kind of get that advantage, like a spring sport. They get
Right.
this whole semester to train, to be here, to understand what UConn volleyball is all about.
Yeah.
And their situations were different too. Like, if everybody wanted to do that, we'd definitely be open to it. But it's also, it's one of those things that like those two specifically were in environments that they kind of outgrown their areas
Yeah.
in a way. And they had the capabilities of they're really, really intelligent young women, and, school is important to them, and got ahead of their studies and made it work. And now they're here. So
Excellent. Another aspect of college sports that I had no idea was the transfer portal, where the window opens while the championships sort of are still going on. What are your thoughts on the whole transfer portal concept?
yeah, I think the transfer portal is overall a good thing. It benefits both sides,
Yeah.
especially if a young woman, just didn't seem like it'd be a good fit. I don't know, life happens, things happen.
Right.
Like maybe they want to go closer to home,
Yeah.
maybe somebody's sick or whatever, or mental health, or
Yeah.
different institution, too big, too small, whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
it's
Because as a 17-year-old making that life huge decision, and then, or even at 16 or 17, you're making that commitment or whatnot, and then you're like, okay, they're not fully matured and just learning. Yeah, it's a huge thing.
yeah. And so, you know, fortunately, like knock on wood, we haven't had a lot of people transfer.
Yeah.
Um, and the ones that had transferred are ones that wanted to play their additional COVID year somewhere else.
Yeah.
Cool. The people that have departed the program, You know, they wanted a different
Yeah.
experience. Like, and I understand that. Like, it's not a problem to me. If it becomes a problem, you know, then I'll have issues.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's when they're here, they're committed to it. And
Yeah.
then when they had the opportunity to leave, they left.
Yeah.
And so with vacancies there with the transfer portal, we had the opportunity to obviously bring in either a replacement in
Mm-hmm.
that specific class or
Yeah.
whatever we see fit. Um, Causes some havoc from an allocation side. Like, you know, there's a thing called balance. Like you want to balance your roster.
Yeah.
But also too, like the transfer portal doesn't always mean you get someone either.
Right.
Like it doesn't mean that like, oh, we could just go in the transfer portal because we're going to get whatever we want. No, like it's it's a two-way street. Like
Yeah.
I protect, you know, and the staff, we protect this program as if it's our child.
Right.
And we want to make sure that the people we bring in that are if through the transfer portal match
Absolutely. Yeah.
us. And some people do, some people don't.
Yeah.
And the same, like I could also go be really aggressive with certain individuals from the transfer portal and they don't even look at us,
Right.
you know? And so yeah, so it's kind of a tug of war.
Yeah.
But it's not always a guaranteed match either.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the pros and the cons.
Yeah.
Like you know, someone from the transfer portal, like it's really important. Not always you're going to get somebody that has experience or someone that does have experience or
Yeah.
someone that is coming from a high level program to, you know, another high level program. Those, and you're starting to see trends on things too. Like
Yeah.
typically Power Five transfers stay in Power Five. Like they don't really change. And the process is fast.
Yes,
It
it
is
seems like
so
that.
fast. And yeah, there's a balance too of like work-life balance for
Yeah.
us as coaches. Like it's during the holidays and
Right.
yeah, like I remember the first time the portal opened and I remember my colleagues being like, yeah, I had to have a visit on Christmas Eve. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
what? Why? And again, like it's just keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
It's you know, I knock on wood now and I say I'm never going to do that. And I probably will never do that
Yeah.
and never say never. But like that's, you know, those are things that you just, I'm a firm believer in it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And
Absolutely.
sometimes my staff absolutely hates that. They're like, Ellen, stop. But, um, you know, I believe that we put enough work into our job that we're going to reap the benefits.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Yeah.
And so the portal is great. I think every year is different though
Yeah.
too. Like we had a really big influx last year because a lot of people had additional COVID years. You know, this upcoming season is the last year of COVID where everybody gets their additional year. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see how it
All
works.
right. And speaking of recruiting, you know, sort of what kind of skills or, you know, I guess abilities are you looking for to identify an athlete that makes them a Husky? What are some of the key things you look for?
Well, first and foremost is when we're evaluating them right away, is just like, how are they playing? Like, not only is it obviously skill, but um, what is their decision process like? How do they interact with their
Yeah.
teammates? How do they interact with their coaches? And then once we identify like, hey, we feel as though this recruit or this prospect can raise our level, like, and not even just like, hey, they could play in our gym, like they can raise our level. And again, this is on potential, right?
Yeah.
Um, and feel like they're the right fit in the volleyball perspective, we try to get them on the phone and figure out who they are as people.
Yeah.
And you know, the individuals that really are attractive to us is the style of athlete that wants to come in and do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not winning isn't be all end all. Like we're a high relationship, but we also want high
Mm-hmm.
results. And so we're not going to be that cutthroat culture. Like we're not going to sit there and say, It doesn't matter who you are as a person. All we care about is winning.
Yeah.
No, that's not what we want. But to figure out how they communicate, like what's their style, what's their style of learning, like how do they describe themselves, like, what is something I can count on them for to win a championship, I have these list of questions I ask them.
Yeah.
And if I feel like they're communicative, they're confident, they have direction, they're motivated, they're obviously academically capable of being able to achieve greatness here from an academic side at
Yeah.
UConn, because we're a high academic school. And obviously from a teammate perspective, like what's their language like?
Right.
And so again, like you're asking for like, what is that special UConn athlete? I always try to figure out what their X factor is. Like I'm like, what's special about you? Like
Yeah.
I don't mean that as like, hey, what's special about you? But like what is special about you? Like why should I ask Olivia to be a part of the UConn family?
Yeah.
And if they can't sit there and figure it out and say, well, you can count on me to work my ass off every day in the gym, or you can count on me that every time you sit me down, like I'm going to be honest with you, or like if they can't answer those questions with confidence,
Right.
and like they've actually thought about it before, yeah, we just say thanks.
Yeah.
We're going to move in a different direction.
All right.
So yeah.
And now on the other side of that, you're approaching a potential player to come to the school. What are some of the key pieces that you sort of like, was key selling points of, come to UConn? We have our brand. We have, it's a, nationally ranked teams are here. The best players around the country are here. What are some of the other reasons to come to UConn, especially for UConn volleyball?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we have a really good balance of all three of those things that we talked about earlier. Academics obviously are high, our brand is there, our support is there. But I think the biggest selling point that we have is just who we are as people.
Yeah.
Like the connection and the relationship. We put them with the team as much as we can. We value their opinion as well. Like after every recruit, we blast our team with questions and they answer them and they're like, yeah, they're like, no, they're like, she's awesome. Here's a red flag, or sell it,
Excellent.
let's go. Because again, like it's like I always say to our team is like a good team is led by the coaches, but a great team is led by the players.
Yeah.
And that's them. Like who do you want them to be a part of? Like you don't want just somebody that's just chilling because they want UConn on their chest. Like
Right.
you want somebody that's willing to work, that's willing to battle with you, that's like, is going to pick you up when you're not feeling the greatest. So
Yeah.
how do you assess those things? So yeah, I mean, it's really about getting them here on a visit, having them be a part of the people that are here. Because I think ultimately UConn can provide anything that every other institution does, plus.
Yep. Yeah.
And, there's some prospects that are like, I want to go to school in the city. And I say, well, UConn's not for you then.
Yep.
Like it's nothing against the university, nothing against them. But if you want to be downtown, like you're an hour
Yeah.
and a half from Boston if you want to go visit, but like you probably will be able to go visit in the springtime, And so, just being open and honest and finding those kids that are like, yeah, I just want to be great.
Yeah.
And those are the kids that I get highly attractive to, and along with the staff.
From a recruiting standpoint too, it's a global stage now where you're trying to pull players from other places. How are you finding them? Are you are they reaching out to you? Are you, from people from around the world? Because like one of your players is from Turkey, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we got Doa from the transfer portal, she was a transfer. Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, a lot of it is us recruiting.
Yeah.
We recruit nationally, we go out, we identify, evaluate, pursue.
Yeah.
Like that's really kind of what we do. We get a heavy amount of interest from from prospects that want to come to UConn. And, I also think that every year, we look for different positions. Like some people will, a setter will send us like, a 2025 setter will send us film and they'll be really, really good. And it's like, well, we're not taking a setter this year, and there's those kind of caveats to the recruiting process as well. It's not just like a free for all every single year too. Right. But it works both ways. It works both ways. Like it's definitely on connection. It's definitely on building relationships. It's going out and pursuing, at the tournaments. So I think it's a really big blend of both.
Yeah. All right. And now, you have Maggie, who's from, she's a local Connecticut. How important is that to, find players within the state and bring them to UConn?
Extremely important. In my opinion, obviously, like any top Division I volleyball player that's from Connecticut, they should come to UConn.
Yeah.
The battle is that maybe they want to go outside of the state,
right.
Like that's, but yeah, I mean, the sport in the state is growing. There's a lot of good people, a lot of committed grassroots programs and coaches that are buying into the growth of the sport, which I am thoroughly happy about, and doing it the right way.
Yeah.
So that these young girls can stay in the sport and reap the benefits of playing competitive volleyball.
Yeah.
And some of them might have the pleasure of playing in college too. And so, I think it's really important to recruit locally. I mean, that's something we put a hierarchy on our recruiting. We try as hard as we can to visit courts that represent the state in whatever tournament we go to.
Yeah.
We try to do as many camps as we can, that can blend with our own personal and professional schedules.
Yeah.
We have conversations with coaches all the time. We have high school day to come to matches. Like we want to encompass this family like volleyball environment that, hey, like you can play some high level volleyball in your backyard.
Yeah.
So grabbing Maggie is I think the second Connecticut player that I've had on the roster. Yeah, the first one was when I was here for the first time. Her name is Sage Esposito. She's from the Milford area. And then obviously Maggie was next. And Maggie's phenomenal, as you know. She's a great person, and she bleeds blue. It's incredible, and she's a phenomenal human being. And so, getting those local athletes to come and commit to UConn is a benefit, because obviously we want their experience to be a high level. And what happens is that it just is word of mouth, like. Yeah. Hey, Maggie was at UConn. She's enjoying her experience. Like they're pushing hard in practice. They're trying to win championships. Like those are the things that can help. And then that just creates more of an environment like, oh, let me go check UConn out. And so, that's my opinion, but I understand that takes a little bit of watering the flower a little bit.
Absolutely. And, I think it's fantastic that, like, she was telling me that you guys, did a sort of open day down at her, where she went to her club, up at Husky here. And, we talked a little about the summer programs. You guys do a phenomenal job. It's not, it's not mailed in. You guys are there. You're working the girls. Your players are involved with them, the coaches. It's a phenomenal job that you guys are doing. It's so worth it to these girls that are, they get so much out of it.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a big part of our job is, it's not just about getting the best players, like it's part of it, but it's not all of it. And especially in an area like Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, parts of New York, Pennsylvania. I mean, even in Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine, like there's probably a heck of a lot of untapped volleyball potential. And especially being an indoor sport, they don't need to be outside. Like it's really important to grow the game. And when people make that commitment to grow the game is only benefits us. And so, pulling from the grassroots roots up is a huge advantage, and building those relationships is key too.
Absolutely. You guys have your own facility now up there. Part of the problem with is, when I talk to high school parents who are playing, their kids are playing volleyball, they really have no idea how good the volleyball sport is unless you see it at that, college level. And it's like, go up to stores, check it out. It's free. It's, you don't have to pay for parking. It's a great way to go and watch high caliber ball and learn about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. And obviously having, parents like you and invested in the sport and invested in the state, I think it's important to continue to keep spreading it as word of mouth as possible.
Yeah.
I know we're attempting to try again, like having very opening conversations about it, but trying to get some state finals and whatnot and the tournament run to be here on campus just to like have them experience it.
Right.
And again, like it's not at a great time because it's both in fall. We've got a season, they've got seasons, but those are things that we're thinking about so that we can continue to keep growing the sport.
Yeah.
And I mean, the attraction we have gotten now is not to where we want it to be.
Right.
We don't want it to finish. We want it to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But like that was from the work that we've done 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, my goal and, our goal, even the department's goal is to get this place sold out all the time.
Yeah.
Like, and it should be. And it's an intimate relationship. It's a game family-like experience. So it's a great place to play. It's we're still creating our own identity of like what is special about our facility and our game-like experience. And we've already got Monster Block down and we've got like the hockey horn for aces I think is pretty cool too. So, and they throw out t-shirts. So why not come and get a t-shirt?
Absolutely. What do you see from the freshmen coming or from the seniors coming to college freshmen? Are they ready to, that level of play right there? Or is it take a little while for them to adjust from, college, high school play to the college level?
It's a hard question because it honestly is different for everybody.
Yeah.
It gets depth on what's already on the team.
Yeah.
It's how the student athlete responds and grows and how fast they can grow. The game is so much faster than it was in high school.
Right.
The systems are different. And not only that, but your lifestyle outside of volleyball is different. So like that's a whole nother managing component. And so, it's tough. It's tough to tell. And everybody's different. Yeah. Honestly, everybody's different. And that's one thing we try to preface beforehand. And I think another advantage of coming in for the summertime is just to kind of get your feet wet, kind of know what campus is all about, what it feels like to be a college student without everybody here and the chaos, what's lifting like, how are we playing, in the sense of open gyms and whatnot. So, and we have regular meetings with our incomers and check-ins and whatnot, just to make sure that their heads on, on a swivel as much as they probably feel like they are.
A better question maybe, what are you seeing any tendencies from these, freshmen coming in that you would like to see either club coaches or high school coaches work on them a little bit more?
I think from a level of coaching, I think you as a coach, I shouldn't say you, for all those yous out there, for all those coaches and youth coaches, is just to continue to work on as much ball control as possible. Like, and I'm not just saying passing or digging. I'm saying setting, serving, blocking, hitting, arm mechanics, fun games that is like outside the box. Because like it's one, and not only is it healthy for the students the prospects, the recruits, the youth to be exposed to different things all the time, but it helps them just to have a better body awareness. They get more interpretation of the game. They understand the game better. Everybody, when they get to the Division I level, they should be able to serve the ball over the net and do it the right way.
Yes.
And to be honest, I've had a couple students that couldn't serve the ball over the net. Like, and it's not, it's not their fault.
Right.
Like, they don't know what they don't know, but to sit there and I'm like, oh, wow, we have to switch the feet. We've got to put the arm back. Like, whoa, we got to start over. Everybody should know what a defensive position looks like.
Right.
Everybody should hands together the right
Their
way.
feet
Like,
the right way. And
yeah, like there's a lot of things that just kind of go unannounced because they're like, well, you're a middle, you just go be a middle, or you're a right side, just go be a right side, or you're the setter, you don't worry about attacking, or you're just the bro, you don't need to hit a ball. Like,
yeah.
and so I think the fundamentals behind the sport, I think, should be touched on every day in training.
Excellent. And now you just talked a little bit about, the freshmen coming in and checking in with them. Sort of, volleyball is more than just the physical game. There's that mental aspect. How do you guys, make sure that your players are, on their, best from a mental standpoint?
Well, check-ins are one.
Yeah.
Tactical empathy is another. And that's simply just by asking questions and validating their emotions.
Yeah.
I say simply, it's very difficult. Also, just allowing them to express themselves, like not necessarily being like a psychologist by any means. Now, trust me, there are definitely times where I'm like, man, I wish I majored in psychology and human performance, because this would be phenomenal. It's just continuing to encourage them that there is light at the end of the tunnel, like, and to not give up. Like, I think there's been a pretty big drop down of resiliency in student athletes. And again, it's not their fault.
Yeah.
But it's the society we live in. Like, I'm even finding myself to not be as resilient as I once was, because everything's at our fingertips.
Right.
Like, and I'm not just saying with social media and our computers and the internet. Like, I'm even talking about the services we're getting provided.
Yeah.
Like, even from a department perspective, like, all right, nobody's giving me an answer, I'm going to find somebody with an answer. And that's how it works. So I think it's trying to continue to keep pushing them to stay disciplined in their actions, to refine their craft. But a lot of it too is that they just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And again, their mindset, I should say the word training, but we have a lot of conversations. We use this company called Squad U that uses an assessment that provides, like, gives us an assessment on how is the athlete fueled, how is the athlete bonded, and how is the athlete think. And so it provides us some data that can allow us to collaborate to figure out how can we get to them faster as coaches to teach them, and then also how can they help their teammates and understand their teammates. And it's similar, like I'd say it's similar. It's not necessarily similar to like a disc profile or a behavior assessment or whatever, but it's around those edges. And it's specifically just for athletes. And so, like, we have like today we've got a culture talk that is like, okay, well, if we want to be here, what do we have to start doing? What do we have to stop doing? And what do we have to continue to do? Like, because if we can all talk here, like we can all talk the talk, but like they don't understand that their decisions and their choices have an impact on what is going to happen up here.
Yeah.
And they're just teenagers. Like, they're peer pressure. They're selfish. Like, college is like you're in a bubble and nothing can go wrong. And now it's like, okay, now I have to be self-aware of how I act and how I interpret things and what I think about, right? To, what the rest of the team needs.
Right.
And then there's other levels of mindset too, is like they live to the expectations of their parents. They live the expectations of themselves. High perfectionism is a big issue on the team. And again, it's not an issue. It's a great motivator. But when perfectionism becomes the problem, there's a lot of issues in there. A majority of the team aims to please. They don't want to
let each other down.
They don't want to let each other down.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I think that's a big part of, this is speaking directly to obviously our group here, but we have high relationships. Like, and they don't want to hurt each other's
Yeah.
feelings. And what I'm trying to help them understand is that because you guys have that relationship with each other, because you genuinely love and care about each other, that means you can have those
Yeah.
conversations. Like you can have those conversations and say, hey, like, and it doesn't need to be this big thing. Like you can go up to somebody and be like, I I want you to be great. Like why are you cutting corners?
Yeah.
Like because you cutting corners does this to the team,
Right.
or I don't know, like your attitude, or even allow somebody to be like, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, and again, like we're social creatures. Like that's who we are as humans, and we need connection. Like, and we just all do it differently. And so going back to the mindset piece, like everybody's just trying to figure each other out. And the great teams, the championship teams,
Yeah.
figure each other out fast. And they don't do it just because it just is like natural.
No, it takes
Some of it
work.
helps that it's natural, right?
Yeah.
But they don't just get there because it just, naturally, like natural selection
Right.
happens. We have to work to it.
Yeah.
And
Communicate.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So now, over the years you've been coaching, is there any significant lesson that you've learned as a coach that has influenced your philosophy?
the answer to this is yes. I think from a philosophical way, I'm heavily influenced. Like I love people's opinions. My dad is like the best. Yeah, I say that now, like I'm saying that now as like an adult and a
Yeah.
parent. We definitely batted heads and
16-year-old Ellen may disagree on that. Yes.
100%. And my mom too, like, I can't forget about my mom. In matter of fact, it was all of my parents. Like even my stepmother, my brother as well, my sister, I have step family, I have my stepsisters too. And, my brother actually played football at Ohio at the same time. So he was an offensive lineman. So we would go at it all the time in my family upbringing. But yeah, I think what from a job perspective and a leadership perspective, I think about my dad
Yeah.
often. For him recently, like I tell this to him all the time, is like he has gone through hell and back in regards to just some medical stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and his life has drastically changed. And again, like he could, and I'm talking physically, like he can't really move much anymore.
Yeah.
He can't, he's all there in his head, but he can't see his grandchildren. You know what I mean? Like those
Yeah.
things are major. He's retired now, but like it's one of those things that like he is able to wake up every day, and and he's a religious guy, and he buys in the fact that he understands what it needs to do in order to be his best version of himself, even
Yeah.
though he's still trying to figure out what that is. And he was a leader. Like he was a fire chief, in high stake, high pressured situations. He worked in our local fire department for a long time in our city. And then he graduated to the refinery that was in town and became like the fire specialist and fire chief of a huge refinery.
Wow.
And he had to teach adult men and women to work together to find safety for, I mean, we're talking chemicals, like we're
Right.
talking crazy stuff that could kill somebody,
Yeah.
and finding those ways, and being a leader that is collaborative and communicative, but hard,
Yeah.
is something that I resonate often on with him, because his style of leadership, I think, is a little bit like I've learned from him
Yeah.
on how to lead, because I mean, there's nothing more like fighting fires. Like, holy crap.
I
Like,
know.
talk about pressure, both, figuratively and,
Physically.
not.
Yeah.
It's really a special way. So I think my dad, and obviously my parents,
Yeah.
and then, some coaches too that are they're just great. They're just great people. And they pushed you, and then you've created a relationship as a friend afterwards. And
Yeah.
you're just like, it's weird how things kind of collaborate and work together as the however you want to say it, whether it's fate or timing or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's also what you put into it too.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. So now, what's your thoughts on where volleyball is today?
I think we're in a new space. Like, I think we're on the brink of something really remarkable, but also I think something on the brink of something that could be really remarkable can also be like really dangerous. This space in which NIL has name, image, and likeness has grown is remarkable, but also kind of scary.
Yeah.
And will that crush the someone, I shouldn't say crush someone like me, but someone who values relationships so much over anything else,
Yeah.
is scary because they put this dollar amount and on people and on and opportunities. And again, it's scary,
Yeah.
but again, like I sit there and I contradict myself and I say, well, but I believe that we're going to be great because of who we are,
Right.
not because of what we're given.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's a big part of a scary place of NIL, but also from a volleyball perspective of like just the sport is pretty crazy because like I said, like TV, exposure,
Yeah.
support, style of athlete. Like, I mean, when we were in school, like when I was playing, like people touching 10 feet were like
Yeah.
pretty good, but now everybody touches 10 feet. People are like touching like 11.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, okay. So I think it's just, we're in a really pivotal time.
Yeah.
And is that time going to change tomorrow? No, but it's in the next year or two. Just think
It's
about
gonna
what
have to
happened 2
change.
years ago to now.
Right. Yeah.
It's going to feel like overnight because it's going to be such in a small increment of time.
Yep. Ellen, thank you for doing this. I really
Of
appreciate
course.
it. But before you go, like past guests, who in your circle of peers or players or other coaches you think would have a great story to come on and share that you think would?
I think Kaylee Parker would be great.
Okay.
I
There we
think
go.
Kenny Jake Turner would be great. They played 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
They're playing pro and they're living life.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, and then I'm trying to think of like even locally,
Yeah.
Megan Drosh, who's the head coach at Eastern.
Okay.
She's a former alumni here as well. Good experience there.
Well, hey, thank you so much, and good luck next year.
Yeah, thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you in the stands.
Absolutely.